All right, so I'm going to go through a bunch of different stuff, like just talking through it pretty much. So starting out here.
Okay, I have your second block challenges. We have Miss Fretwell versus Miss Callahan, Miss Hattendorf versus Miss Provost, and we have Mr. Ballinger versus Coach Cook. Good luck, everyone. Bring your money down to room 911 as soon as you have it counted. Thank you.
All right, so scenario 1, we've got a group of 12 students. We want to record how much money each student's going to spend at lunch and what they spend it on. So that's scenario 1. Y'all don't write anything until I tell you. Scenario 2, yeah. Are there somewhere on that row of 5s or one somewhere? Scenario 2, using a group of 12 students, I select 6 to give them $10 before the lunch, record how much money they spend, and what they spend it on. So are scenario 1 and scenario 2 the same? So what was different about scenario 2 than scenario 1? What is the same about scenario 2 and scenario 1? 12 students and how much money they spend on lunch and what they spend it on. What's different? Giving and some of them $10 before and not giving some of them $10. So the difference between these, one of them is an observational study and one of them is an experiment. So first thing on there, it says types of data collection. I don't think your blank's big enough to write observational study, but that's fine. The first one's observational study. So I recorded the same thing in both of those. There's just one of them that I kind of interjected. And I'm going to shorthand most of this. So because of observational study, I want you to write observe, but do not attempt to influence responses. So observational study, we observe, but do not attempt to influence responses. And then blank 2 is experiment. We deliberately impose treatment in order to observe responses. I want that one to be written the exact same way as this up there. Deliberately impose treatment in order to observe responses. Today, the next couple days, next couple weeks, up until May, if it asks you if it's an observational study or experiment, and it is an experiment, usually the reason why is because treatment was imposed. You could be more context specific, but still treatment was imposed. I just don't write anything yet. Not just any experiment, but a well-designed, we're just not there yet, is the only way to show causation. So if I just had 12 people go and we wrote down how much money they spent, and these people ended up looking like they spent more than these people, we don't know if there's a reason that they spent more than the other ones. So like the only way we could say that that's the reason they spent more is because of the treatment being imposed. So the blank that's on there, you can only show blank through a blank. So you can only show causation, which is cause and effect. You can only show causation through an experiment. So I can't do an observational study and say, this group those who do this spend more because of this. This whole page is saying the same thing. All right, population. Difference between population and sample, the big group, the small group, essentially what you guys think of it. Your population, though, is everyone that we want information about. You go ahead and write that on the side of population. Entire group of individuals about which we want information. So then underneath that, it says everyone who, I want you to write could have been selected. Now, in general, the difference between population and sample, you should have at least had an idea of what that is before you came to my class. But true definition of it gets a little bit pickier than you have to do in your other classes. And you go ahead and write beside the sample part of the population we actually gathered data about or from. So you go ahead and write that definition of sample. So if we are curious about student spending at lunch, then our population is technically just all students, not specific to Greenville County, not specific to JLMAN, all students. So it depends on the way the problem is worded. But then samples who you actually select. So what's our next word? Census. What do you think the census is? Gathering data from the full population, and the U.S. Census is not actually by definition a census. Now they attempt to, but they don't. So the census, the U.S. Census is actually not really a census. Now, some people don't respond immediately. They then get contacted again, they contact again, then they end up showing up at their house. They do a lot of work to try to make sure that they get a hold of everybody. And they do a lot of follow-up in different ways. But what are some people who would possibly never end up in the census? Homeless people that one gets funny. Homeless people is a very good example of people who don't get included in the census, but technically should be. There gets some funny in between stuff with like college students that end up systematically getting left out. But that's kind of beyond where we are right now. All right, so purpose of taking the general contacting a member of the state population for census. All right, so I'm going to kind of click through some stuff for a while before y'all write anything down. What's the purpose of taking a sample? So, like, I want to know about the spending habits of JLMAN students. Why do I take a sample? So I don't have to go through the work to observe the entire population. What kind of sample do we not want? A bias sample, like a group that's not going to give us information that is representative of everybody. Because we're taking a sample because it's easier, more convenient. but we still want it to represent what the population should represent. Alright, so we have 12 dots to select from, and we want 4. What is the probability that a specific dot gets selected? 1 out of 12. Maybe there's something about the way that they were positioned, and we need to account for that. So maybe we need to actually, like, they were in order by the way they did something. So the first person, let's say your student IDs probably have something to do with when you signed up, when you enrolled. So like someone who was ready to enroll and do everything that's going on would enroll earlier, whereas somebody who didn't realize they're supposed to enroll later. Maybe that has some impact on how much money they spend at lunch. They didn't have people to bring them to get them enrolled, have the paperwork. They might not have the same amount of spending at lunch as someone who did. So we jump them up first. So maybe there were different kinds of dots. So give a little bit of context here. Let's say some of the dots are children, some of the dots are adults. So we're not talking about spending of gentlemen right now. And I want to survey about TV shows being watched. Well, are adults and children going to have different TV viewing habits? Yes. So I probably want to consider that. I don't want to accidentally get all 4 adults and say that this is going to be my TV watching habits of everybody. So the adults are probably going to have different responses from the children. Within each group, so like within adults, within children, now they're not going to be exactly perfect, obviously, but more so, adults are going to have similar opinions on TV shows as opposed to children who then have similar viewing habits within children. So that's a big thing here was a within versus between. Within the groups here, they're similar. So adults are similar to other adults. Children are similar to other children. Between groups are probably not. So we think that children are different than adults. So now let's say we split them. Now that we've split them, what could we do if we still want 4 selected out of the 12? Take 2 randomly from each one. And why 2 from each one? Because we have even amounts of each one. So if we had 9 adults and 3 children, would we want to take 2 and 2? So you'd want to take it proportionally to the group. So in order to get a good sample that is good representation of a population, I want to ensure that both adults and children are represented. So just the same thing we were just saying. So I'm going to separate it first and then randomly select 2 adults, randomly select 2 children. By doing this, we would hopefully get a sample that represents our population well. We have ensured that there are going to be 2 adults and 2 children in our sample. But it may not always be easiest to split the population into similar groups and then take some from each group to create our sample. So if we were doing this by like house, we wouldn't want to, no. Let's think about it with students, jailman students. Maybe number of siblings has something to do with it. We could put in everybody into groups by how many siblings they have and then go through each number of sibling options and interview some from each number of siblings. But do you see how that's starting to get me more work than we wanted in the first place? So now we're kind of like, okay, I get it, but maybe that's not always going to be super helpful. I always use this example as crab legs. So I don't remember how much I wrote here. So when you go to I can eat seafood place, and they've got all the crab legs out, and somebody says, go get some crab legs, and you go pick out like 4 crab legs. Are you going to walk up to a cluster of crab legs and take one of them off and throw the rest back and take another one off of one and throw the rest back? No, especially not now. So this example goes with that, like as far as connecting to words. That's why I think of crab legs here. You grab a cluster and you take the cluster. Yeah, but bananas, some people do take off this. More so than this. Yeah.
Well, when I check people out at my job, people do take individual bananas.
Yeah, so bananas I would see more than crab clusters. That'd be weird. All right, so crab legs are different. So you have the big claw part right here. You have some at the end like here that are smaller. So one cluster generally gets a good variety. So like you've got some of the bigger ones, you've got some of the typical ones, and you've got some of the ones that are smaller at the end. So each cluster represents the different types of crab legs there can be. So you want a good variety that represents the population well. So like we want adults, we want children. So we want to get a little bit of each type. So if I think about doing this is what I was talking about. It'd be weird to like walk by and take one of each and then throw the rest back. So they already come in clusters. Each cluster represents a variety. It's got some of the big ones, some of the regular ones, some of the little ones. Every time I take a cluster, I'm getting a good variety that represents the population. So crab legs, they are similar between the groups. So from this crab cluster to this crab cluster, they both look kind of the same. From one cluster to the next, they do a pretty good job of representing all of the different types. So in this case, I would select an entire crab cluster and then take all of the crab legs from that cluster to be my sample. All right, so my first example here, we just had a population. We selected a certain number from the population. We didn't really do much of anything there. My second example, we split the population into similar groups. So we did adults together, we did children together, and then we selected some from each of the similar groups. And then my third example, I split up the population into similar groups and then selected entire groups. So just with my first example, is each individual given an equally likely chance of being selected? I had 12, I picked 4. Did I have anything that encouraged you that they were not equally selected? No, so, okay, all of them had an equal likely chance of being selected. Now, is every possible group of size n given an equally likely chance of being selected? So could I have gotten, that's a weird question to answer with this one. I'll answer with the second one. So the second one, this was adults and children. Is each individual given an equal likely chance of being selected? How many adults did we have? 6. How many did we pick? 2. So their chance of being selected was what? So what was your chance of being selected when we were selecting 4 out of 12? 1/3, right? So we're still giving an equal likely chance of being selected. Now, is every possible group of 4 people given an equal likely chance of being selected? Could I have gotten 4 adults? In the way I did the sample, could I have gotten 4 adults? Is that a possible sample? Yes. So is every possible way I could group the individuals into that size given an equal likely chance? No, because we ensured there were 2 adults and 2 children. In the third one, these are the crab legs. So let's say we picked 10 crab legs. So we did 2 clusters of 5. Is each individual given an equal likely chance of being selected? Still the same. Is every possible group of 10 crab legs given an equal likely chance of being selected? No, because I couldn't have gotten 10 just the big claws because of the way I did my sample. So the only one where every possible group of size n has an equal likely chance of being selected was the first one. All right, so this is the first thing that you're writing down after all that. So random sample in itself just means every member of the population has an equal likely chance of being selected. So this is one of the questions that I asked. Did every member have an equal likely chance of being selected? Was that answer yes or no for the first one? Yes. What about for the second one? Yes. What about for the third one? So all three of those were examples of random sample, but there were definitely differences between the different types of samples. Okay, so the next one is, what does it say? Different types of samples on your paper?
Types of random sampling.
All right, so the first one, stratified. I want you to write stratified random sample. They are types of random samples, so I shouldn't need to say stratified random sample, but I always have people who don't make that connection. And so I want to write this one a little bit shorthand. I mean, you can write what's up there, but